This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You got it. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Greetings, one and all. Lembit Öpik here on Lembit Öpik Live on unprecedented TV. And boy, what a year we are going to have. Everything from the I told you so, so's we want to put forward about snowstorms, through to the I told you so's I'm going to put through back to you about Ukraine, and I told you so's about Greenland. Actually, that last one I made up, but I haven't made up the fact that I think that Donald Trump is running rings around Europe, the Eurocrats and Keir Starmer, who once again embarrassed themselves in yet another meeting in Paris. These seem to be the most flaccid, impotent political events in recent history. But I'll see what my guest, Nick Buckley MBE, says about that in a minute. Before I go to see him, though, please do follow us on X. You can find me at Lembit Öpik. You can also like and subscribe at Unprecedented TV on YouTube. That really helps us, costs you nothing, and we are about to go into a vast period of expansion, and it's a pretty exciting time. However you get your on-stream media, please do spread it around. I love the fact that so many of you have been doing that, and best of all, you've actually been giving us great feedback too, and you can get involved in the comments if you wish as well. So wherever you are, thank you very much for watching. Now, one other thing, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of shows in our archive, and you can compare the predictions we make and perhaps the hubristic I told you so's that we pump out, as I just have, with the reality. I'll be the first person to admit it if I've got it wrong, but so far we've got it at least 90% right. The theme, therefore, today is what's going on with Europe, Starmer, Donald Trump, Greenland, and Ukraine. We've had yet another coalition of the willing. What an embarrassing phrase, in my view. And they met this time in France with the impotent leader of France, namely President Macron, meeting the impotent leader of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, and a bunch of others too. They've made more commitments, more promises. They're suggesting that they're going to put some soldiers into Ukraine when there's a ceasefire. A few problems with that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But what for? If Russia gets its three demands, surely that's it over anyway. Apparently not. Apparently these Eurocrats are terrified that Russia will try to, well, invade and conquer Europe. Is that feasible? Is that even practical? Is there any point in it? Or is this simply further evidence of the total amateurishness, and I would go further, childishness of our politicians? Joining me now, there's somebody who can never be accused of being childish. It's certainly not on air. It's Nick Buckley MBE. Nick, good to see you. And I think I'm entitled to say Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and Happy New Year to you and all the listeners.
Viewers, they're
And
not on
viewers,
radio, you know. if you thought we were on radio, why do you wear a tie? Or maybe you just think people are washing up while they're talking and they can't bear to see us on screen. They couldn't handle the truth. Anyway, how was your Christmas and New Year?
Oh, great. Nice and quiet. Did what I wanted. Plenty of food, plenty of drink. Went out quite a few times. So, yeah, really good.
That sounds a bit decadent.
Well,
our listeners will be obsessed. Maybe that's what you think now. You think that our listeners are so poor they can't afford a telly anymore.
do you know what? It's the opposite. I think radios are more expensive than TVs these days.
Yeah, you could be right about that. But what's even more expensive is a war in Ukraine. Let's get into this. You may have seen all this. The latest, in my view, hugely embarrassing meeting. There's one person I respect in that picture, and that's, can you guess the one I respect in that picture?
Maloney.
Yeah, absolutely. The head of of Italy, who I think always looks, I would use a stronger phrase, but a little bit fed up and she's with the others. And you just look at them, it's just embarrassing in my view. But to set the scene, they met in Paris. They meet all the time. The Coalition of the Willing. The Coalition of the Willing, which Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos, one of our great presenters, has rechristened the Coalition of the Wallies. And they meet and they talk and they say stuff. Before we get into the detail, what's your take on the latest meeting?
So the latest meeting, they've now decided, which I actually predicted in my New Year predictions, that's going to happen this year. I didn't realize it'd be in the first 7 days. That's how good I am. That's how good I am. I said that we're going to have Western European nations, soldiers on the ground in Ukraine publicly. I'm sure we've already got personnel there already. I'm sure we've got special forces. I'm sure we've got advisors. I'm sure all that's going on behind the scenes. But I was talking about publicly and having soldiers there. Maybe not on the front line, but saying they're peacekeepers and things like that. And that's the conclusion they've come to now at the last meeting, that they're going to send or potentially send European troops to Ukraine to keep the peace.
But they've been saying this. I think you're being premature. I started the show today. If you're watching this live, of course, you're watching it in the archive. It'll be historic and you can compare what we're saying with the reality as it transpires. But I was saying this morning that they're making these commitments, but I don't believe it's anything more than that. And here's why. Let's get into this straight away. They're saying when there's a ceasefire, we'll put troops in to keep the peace. That's what they've said.
Yeah.
Russia has said, we're not interested in a ceasefire. That simply means that Ukraine can rearm and carry on extending the war that they're losing. They'll still lose, but they'll just carry on extending the war. And America has said that they don't want a ceasefire for various reasons. They actually want a lasting peace. So the fundamental point at the outset of the Coalition of the Wallies, and I'm not saying you're a Wally, but you have made an assumption that they've made, is there'll be a ceasefire, because without the ceasefire, there's no way to get these troops on the ground in the first place. So I'm suggesting to you, this is yet another empty promise.
It may sound like an empty promise, but we've been dragged into many wars on empty promises, and it's called mission creep. So at the moment, they said, if there's a ceasefire, we're going to send troops to keep the peace. There is no ceasefire. Oh, that makes us look stupid now. Russians are not afraid of us. The Americans are letting us down. We're going to send troops anyway, and that's how many wars start, by mission creep. So there's a chance we still could send troops there, and things may escalate, things may not. But we need to understand why certain Western politicians and leaders are doing what they're doing, and it's because they want. There's two reasons really. The first reason is they have to be relevant. At the moment, the Ukraine war is basically has got nothing to do with them. It's Ukraine, America, and Russia. They're the three main players here. The Western powers want to be involved. Otherwise, we're basically second world countries. But no, we had empires. We were amazing. We've got to be involved. That's the first part. The second part is all our intelligence services and our armed forces across Western Europe are saying Russia's dangerous. Russia is a threat. They are a threat. They're not a big threat, but they are a threat. And if we allow the Americans and the Russians to do a deal that doesn't include us, then we may be piling up problems for another day. What happens if Russia then decides to take the rest of Ukraine? What happens if Russia goes somewhere else? What happens? These things, I agree with you, are not very likely, but intelligence services and our armed forces shouldn't be working on the premise that this isn't very likely, so let's not do anything about it. So I think there's multiple things playing here.
But when can we just get the Macron picture up again? Thank you. When we're looking at people like them, Macron, Starmer, and Zelensky, I think we're looking at three of the worst leaders in post-war history. Macron is utterly useless, as far as I can see. Desperately unpopular in his own country. Starmer, we've talked about before, and comes across as just unable to think strategically, and Zelensky's losing a war, and I suspect he has other problems as well, but I'll ask them the questions about them in a minute. So when you've got those people on your side, you're just not on a winning on a winning streak. But you said something which I find interesting on to explore. You said we need to be prepared. I see no scenario in which Russia is going to try to invade and conquer the Baltic states. So there's a specific prediction. And by extension, Finland or Germany or Poland or France. I don't think Russia has any military territorial ambitions beyond securing the safety it needs on the Ukrainian border. Now, they could say, well, you promised not 1 inch to the east, and you've now got Estonians and Latvians, Lithuanians, all these other countries in NATO. So you lied in 1990 NATO. And they could say, well, and we're going to invade and conquer those and get those out of NATO too. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think they've been very clear. Their three demands, and their three demands pretty much from the start have been the same. They have been from the same, not even pretty much, actually from the start. Denazification of Ukraine, which shouldn't be a problem if it's not Nazified anyway. Why would anyone object to that? The second demand is no NATO membership for Ukraine, something promised in 1990. And the third one is demilitarized Ukraine, which is a consequence of the other two in a way. So why can't we just agree those three things and get peace?
Two things. The first thing is you don't see Russia being a threat and taking over any other countries. We had this conversation in the late 1930s in this country. A guy called Adolf Hitler. He doesn't want an empire. He's only taking this land from Czechoslovakia because they're all German speakers. That's all he wants. So we never know what somebody wants. It's always like, I used to be a Boy Scout. It's best to be prepared. So let's prepare that Russia is dangerous and maybe a threat in the future. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what all countries should be doing with people we don't trust. Is they're a potential threat. Let's make sure they don't surprise us one day. Not got a problem with that. With Ukraine itself, those European leaders have also got another worry there. So America now has just kidnapped the elected leader of Venezuela. They're talking about Greenland. If Europe must be thinking to themselves, and I can see why they're doing it, Europe must be thinking to themselves, are we entering a new phase in world politics now where the big boys take what they want, like we did 150 years ago? Weak countries, we take them. So is that sending a signal to Russia, to Putin, that, do you know what? You can sort of have Ukraine. You can have it. The Americans don't care. As long as you don't interfere with what we're doing on our doorstep in Latin America, South America. So all I want is Europe to be prepared. Now, our leaders at the moment in Europe are pathetic, as you rightly said. They can't prepare for anything. We all want the war in Ukraine to stop because it does not benefit Western Europe. The way to stop it is to make sure it stops. It's not to make sure we get the best deal for Ukraine. It's not to make sure we get the best deal for anybody but ourselves. And the best deal for ourselves is the war ends. That's the best deal we should be looking for now.
Yeah, after the break, I want to talk to you about Venezuela and Greenland and what that tells us about, well, the military integrity of the West. But there's a picture. They look fuzzy in that picture because they are fuzzy. That's probably as sharp as you can get with those people. But if that lot are who we depend on for our European security, we might as well just invite Putin to come in and help himself.
Yeah.
The idea of Keir Starmer being a war leader, that fills me with dread. I would much rather have a negotiated peace with Putin in 2026 than a non-negotiated war with him in Ukraine. But where I disagree with you is that this analogy with pre-Second World War Germany, I don't see any way that Putin would want to extend himself to that kind of a war. But What does he benefit by threatening Poland or Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania? What does he get out of that?
I have no idea.
Well, you must have a theory, because you're the one who postulated that we have to be ready for it. I can't see any scenario. I cannot see any scenario where he's militarily going to try to attack a mainstream European Union member.
And I agree with you. I can't see a theory either. But that doesn't mean a theory doesn't exist. Just because I can't see into the mind of a lunatic doesn't mean that lunatic doesn't exist and isn't a danger. And I think the question I'd put back to you regarding Russia, you don't see them as a threat. Would you bet your life on it?
Well, that's just... Well, it's okay, define threat, and then I might say I would bet my life on it. Define threat.
Define threat that Russia potentially over the next few years, next few decades, whatever time scale, could rearm, could become a military power again. Of course, they have ideas of being a world power because they used to be a world power, and losing that has affected their sense of being. So they're trying to go back to the great days of the Soviet Union, when they, you know, ran a big chunk of the world, when they had influence. That is, and again, Germany, go back to Nazi Germany, the Aryan race. These things drive people, especially dictators and people like that. It wouldn't surprise me if they have those ambitions. Well, are they ready yet to invade Poland or do anything? I've got no idea. Do they want to? Again, I have no idea. I just don't want to take a chance. I want to make sure we've got strong walls, strong borders, a strong military, and then we don't have to worry about them.
You asked me a pretty big question there. Would I bet my life on it? Would I bet my life on Russia not invading Germany in the next year? Yeah, I would. Would I bet my life on Russia not trying to invade European Union in the next million years? No. And it's just not realistic to me that it would happen in the short term. Would I bet my life on Ukraine not trying to invade other countries in the next 1,000 years? No. Ukraine, in my view, is a corrupt, broken state with corrupt, broken politicians who've been repeatedly accused of fraud and of shoveling loads of money into their own pockets from this war, because in war circumstances, it's comparatively easy to steal money if you're really determined to do it. But it's somewhere in between, isn't it? And my issue is I can't see any motivation for Vladimir Putin wanting to invade and conquer a European country. But even then, if you take this rather absolutist approach and say, even if there's a tiny chance we need to do something about it, we're not going to be able to then, because theoretically France could try to invade Britain. We've been at war with France before. Why don't you go back that far? Why have you chosen an arbitrary distinction? Why haven't you expressed the fact that the biggest threat, in my view, to the European Union at the moment is the phenomenal corruption associated with Ukraine, which stands to drain our resources for no reason? Why haven't you said that Ukraine's a threat?
Ukraine is a threat because of the war they're in. Ukraine could develop into a threat in the future, and you're right, every country could be a threat in the future. But we have a modern history with Russia. Russia is a semi-dictatorship ruled by one man who probably has ambitions. Or
are you mixing that up with Ukraine? Remind me, they haven't had an election. What's the legitimacy of Ukraine, of Ukraine's leader, Zelensky? Putin had an election. You can say it was rigged or whatever, but he's had an election according to the necessary timescale. Putin has, but Zelensky hasn't. Explain that one to me.
No, I agree. As we all know, Ukraine is a completely corrupt country. It's been used as a pawn between the West and Russia. We've interfered with their politics. We interfere with the running of the country. Now we're propping up this government. We're propping up their army. We're heavily involved in Ukraine because we see it as a vassal state that we want to use for our own benefits. I get all that. But this whole discussion started around the war in Ukraine. I think we all agree the war has to stop. And again, I don't really care who comes out the winner of this war. Is it Russia? They've gained land, they really won. Or is it Ukraine? They've managed to keep 90% of their country and, you know, they've come out victorious. I don't care who comes out the winner, because if we can stop the war, then the West is the winner. My country will be the winner, because this war is nothing but a headache for us. Financial drain. It's destabilizing Europe itself. And the quicker it ends, the better for everybody.
Okay, well, stay with us. You're watching me, Lembit, Öpik, with Nick Buckley MBE. The man is paranoid about Russia, some would say. Some would say.
And China. And China.
And China. And France, maybe. What about Albania? Ukraine? Okay, let me modify my statement. Nick Buckley, who's paranoid. I don't really think that. Before we go back to Nick Buckley, I want to remind you of somebody who isn't paranoid. It's a fantastic campaigner. It's Claire Dyer. She's broken at least 2 stories which became national, broke them right here on Unprecedented TV. She does Dire Consequences. We normally put them out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays at 0800 GMT and Thursdays at 1700 GMT, but we're going to increase that. We're going to put some of the back issues out as well soon. Absolutely brilliant. And she's very brave. Watch this. That's Claire Dyer. That's compelling viewing, and you should watch it, please. You'll learn a lot when she takes local issues and finds the national and international relevance from them. But for now, we're talking international issues with Nick Buckley. You're not paranoid. I feel guilty, and I got told off during the break.
It's good to be paranoid.
Well, are you laughing at me?
No. We all need to be a little more paranoid, because it's a natural instinct. That's what keeps us alive. It's a survival strategy. If you're walking through the woods and you hear a branch crack, it's like, is that just a branch or is that a wolf? So it's best to take precautions, climb up a tree. And if it turns out just to be a broken branch, then you've lost nothing. But if it turns out to be a wolf, you've saved your life. So paranoia can save you.
Well, I don't want to be rude. I know you live in the north of England, but if you're walking through woods and climbing trees in your suit because you think there's a wolf coming, that's really paranoid in Britain.
Well, we have a story about this, Little Red Riding Hood. If she'd have climbed that tree, she'd have been fine.
But it wasn't in Britain. We don't have any more wolves. We ate them all, I think, or something like that.
We hunted them all to death. Why? Because we were paranoid about them, so we wiped them out.
I think Little Red Riding Hood would have had other issues if she decided to corner herself and top up a tree. At least I know where to find you now if you're late for a show. We've been talking about Coalition of the Willing. And there's another picture of them together for peace and security. Yes.
Group hug, everybody. Group hug.
Kumbaya. And of course, the one person who can't look at the camera is Keir Starmer. Just every time you see Maloney, you just think she's just feeling, why do I have to hang around with these idiots? Yeah. I want to interview her and ask her that question. There are half a dozen politicians in that list there that I would put as in the worst 10% in the last 100 years, I would say. You were saying before the break that we need to be prepared and paranoid just in case Russia's going to do something. These are the people who'd be getting together to fight the war. Surely you don't seriously think these people are competent to fight the war. The one that they've been trying to fight, they've been losing hand over fist. And tragically, I would say over 2 million people are dead in Ukraine alone now.
And this is because since World War II, we've relied on America to protect us. So therefore, we've not had an urgency to elect real tough leaders to run our countries, because it's like, oh, we don't have to worry about defense. The Americans will protect us. They always have, they always will. But those days are over. And if I was Putin looking at Western Europe, I'd be going, easy pickings. Sorry, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Still not easy pickings, but my God, they're easier to defeat than they would have been, a few decades ago. Look at the British Army, look at the foreign armies full of gays and queers and women.
That doesn't make them bad fighters. I understand the DEI point you're making. And if you're saying that we should have a meritocracy, get the best fighters in instead of having some kind of quota system, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've weakened our armed forces. Our leaders are weak and pathetic, and have been the whole society has been over feminized. So our leaders are over feminized. Just as you said, that slogan on that poster said then, it's all about peace and can we just not get along? And do you know what, Russia, you're not bad. Give us a hug. And what these people don't realize, because we've not had a war really since the Second World War. A proper war where, conscription, lots of people fighting, lots of people dying, is we forgot in the West now how evil the human heart is, and the evil they will do, and the things they will do, and what they want. And we forgot all of that now. We think everyone's like us and we just all want to get along. Most of the world isn't like us.
Yeah, well, we've got the coalition of the willing, and they meet and they don't really do anything. They're actually hugging there. I just find all this whole thing awkward. There are a couple of American representatives showed up, and it seems to me that Americans just are laughing at Europe. They're just absolutely not taking Europe seriously at all. They've showed up for this meeting, probably to instruct the Europeans on what they have to do. But all this fighting, I just don't believe, largely for the reasons you've said, I don't believe that the Europeans have any capacity at all to change the course of this war. They sign these bits of paper, and what for? What's it mean? It's meaningless. So Wickoff does his duty, speaking politely and everything else, but I don't see the Americans thinking that Carney there, the man who thinks there's a climate emergency, I don't think that anyone takes these people seriously. Can we just stop that for a minute? No, well, you missed it now. But basically, I find these people insipid, literally insipid.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but I think what you need to think about is, what are they trying to achieve?
Well, what are they? I can't figure it out anymore.
Well, yeah. So again, this should be easy for you because you were a politician for a long time. These are politicians. What are these people trying to achieve? It isn't a ceasefire. It isn't world peace. They're trying to achieve what all politicians always try to achieve, which is to be re-elected. And all these politicians know through polling and through other elections and history that you're more likely to get voted in and to have your polling quite high if you're a war leader, if you look tough on an international stage, if you're seen with other leaders, people automatically subconsciously go, he must be a somebody. So all these Western leaders are doing this pantomime, because that's all it is. It's a PR pantomime for their own audiences.
But they don't look like war leaders. Look at them. They just wander around talking about this man. I will listen to Zelensky. If you're watching this live, you'll have to go right back to 5th of January. He kept saying, it's still not enough. It's still not enough. His same old mantra, because he doesn't understand politics, not properly. He's not a professional politician, in my view. There's a professional politician. There's a man who really knows how it works. And he moans, Zelensky moans, I need more, however much he gets. His country's being smashed to pieces because, frankly, Zelensky's incompetent. He's being supported by incompetent European leaders, and America doesn't really take him seriously.
And America doesn't take any Western European leaders seriously. They're all failing, and we've been failing again since Second World War. But again, let me go back to the point I was making. These Western leaders are doing this for the home audience. People like you know because you know too much. You know, former politicians, you read up on this stuff. They're not going to fool
look at
you.
that. Look at the embarrassment. It's embarrassment. I'm sorry, I'm asking my team to go back a bit. But basically, these scenes, they just don't. They actually, it looks like amateur hour. All the standing around all the time. It's just look at that. Look at that.
That makes you cringe, but the general person in the UK who doesn't know much about politics is looking at that and going, "Wow, Keir Starmer is with the head of France, the head of Ukraine. They're trying to get safety for the Ukrainians. They're going to take Russia. This is good PR at home for the non-political voter base.
Well, what about this then? I mean, I just don't think so. I don't feel that. When you watch Trump, what's the body language here? Trump, he's not hugging Zelensky. He's not holding hands with Zelensky. He's not even really looking at Zelensky. Trump does most of the talking. I watched this whenever Zelensky arrived, and he told everybody like it is. And there's the reality. That's what's happened. Those are the bits that that Russia wants, and they're gonna jolly well get them. Trump knows this, and Trump is a heavy-duty player. He doesn't go around prancing about in the coalition of the willing. He doesn't bother turning anything up most of the time. He just sends other people. So in my view, I think you're being almost overly almost, I don't know, maybe this is unfair, Nick, and shoot me down if you want to, but almost overly sympathetic to the benefit of those other meetings. I see why Trump does this, because Trump is saying all the time, I am in charge. I summoned all these people. Here I am with Vladimir Putin. Here I am in Alaska. We got our massive big aeroplanes behind us, and we worked it out. Now that I take seriously. And I, by the way, think they did work it out, because there's only one possible outcome. The three demands of Russia being met, and Trump and Putin enforcing it. And I think all the other stuff just looks lame and petty and embarrassing.
I completely agree. But again, the reason why they're doing it is for the home audience, because they think it makes them look like world leaders.
Does it? Do you really think that it does?
To me, it doesn't, no. But but when you're failing at home, so let's look at Keir Starmer. When you're failing at home, and you can't even go out of 10 Downing Street without people singing Keir Starmer is a W, without people singing, people are shouting him all the time. Most of his cabinet have been banned from their local pubs. They're so unpopular. So you can't build up a reputation in the UK. So therefore, it has to be external. It has to be an international reputation where people then look at the paper and a couple of headlines like Keir Starmer is meeting with world leaders to solve the Ukraine war. Those things have a subconscious value. And I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm not saying he's going to be elected again, but I understand why he's doing it, why he's trying this PR stunt.
But then it gets a whole lot worse, because they attack Putin for invading Ukraine, and then they say, I could see the reasons why Donald Trump would kidnap Maduro. He hasn't exactly said that, but he might as well have said that. And so on the one side, they're saying that they need to rein in naughty Putin and give money to Zelensky, who's dripping in accusations of corruption. But then when Trump does something like, well, certainly catching the president of a country with a population of 30 million people and taking the person back to England, Starmer can't condemn it. So in that case, he's absolutely undermined himself. The reason I'm saying this is because how can the public take Starmer and people like them seriously if they say Trump can do this, but it's wrong for Putin to do this, something similar? Why, for example, would they have any moral justification now to complain if Putin kidnapped Zelensky on claims of corruption? And Putin could say, well, Maduro hasn't been found guilty either. It's just an accusation. but we're going to give Zelensky a fair trial in Russia because he's obviously not going to be tried in Ukraine. What's the difference?
I think the best way to round this up is shock horror. Politicians are hypocrites. Really? Of course it's a hypocritical. We always choose our friends and our foes, even if they're almost exactly the same. So you're right. Putin invades part of Ukraine and he's the new Hitler, is evil. We've got to stop this savage. Trump invades a neighboring country and kidnaps the president. It's like, well, he wasn't a very nice man, the president of Venezuela. He was corrupt, he was evil. So we do this all the time. The reason why Western Europe are doing this is because we rely on America. We are vessels of the American regime. We are puppets. We have been, again, since the Second World War. We rely on them for our defense. We rely on them for trade. We heavily rely on them. And with a president like Trump, you can't get away with criticizing him without consequences. So therefore, they're all pussyfooting around, trying to keep their backbenchers on board, the far left on board, but not wanting to criticize Trump too much. It's all hypocrisy. I'm not sure if any of these things was right. I'm not sure if Putin should have took that land because they're all Russian speakers. I'm not sure if America should go into Venezuela to stop a drug dealing, genocidal maniac. I'm not sure. All that I know is these things we've done before. And if we're looking at regime change in Venezuela, that never works out. It didn't work out in the Middle East. Doesn't work. It's not worked out in the 70s and 80s when the CIA was overthrowing regimes in Latin and South America. I just don't think Trump cares. I think this is part of Trump's America first. If we leave death and destruction in our wake, not our problem. America first. And the European leaders are scared stiff of that.
The other thing, and I want to finish on this, to complicate the situation even further, Donald Trump, as you say, has taken some rather direct action in Venezuela, many saying that's illegal. But the very same Europeans who are criticizing Vladimir Putin for his incursion into Ukraine are not willing to condemn Trump. But there's another complication. It's the relationship between Putin and Maduro. Putin can have a field day. So can the Chinese and South America saying, well, how much more evidence do you need? That you need security guarantees from us in China and Russia. Because if you haven't got them, then America could nick your leader. and isn't this playing the fact that Europe looks completely flaccid and impotent now? It simply creates the opposite effect as should be created by this coalition of the willing nonsense, because they're just laughing. Trump's laughing at them, and Putin can be rubbing his hands saying, well, Europe doesn't have to like me. Most of the world does.
Yeah, I think Trump has realized that the Americans have policed the world now for getting close to 100 years, and they're hated because of it. So I think Trump... I think near enough they are. Yeah, they're always seen as the baddies, interfering, even if they're doing good stuff. That I think a large proportion of the world hates them because of it. So I think America and Trump has decided, you know what, we're in this for ourselves now. If we don't move the pieces on the board to benefit us now, it's going to be too late in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, because China is building. They're going to be a huge power. Russia might increase their power. America's almost bankrupt as well. We may not be able to spend as much money on defense. So I think he's preempting a tougher world for America, and he's moving some of the pieces to benefit America. That's my sort of understanding of that. But you're right. He's now given free rein to Putin, as in to say, well, we can't criticize you much because we're doing exactly the same. China might be looking at Taiwan going, well, here's a great opportunity now, because we can just say they're a corrupt regime and blah, blah, blah. And to a certain extent, Trump mustn't really care. I think Trump must be going, we only want influence over the areas we want influence. The rest of the world, other people can influence that. I think they're building their borders around what they're going to call the Greater America.
A few comments here. Aurora says, Lemby Lamb. Thank you very much. Not sure how much that helps, but I appreciate the intimacy. Chris Jennings says, Russia aren't a threat, but NATO and the West are. And Nick Buckley, you're losing it. Russia is a powerhouse. Be very afraid of the globalists first. I'm more inclined to agree with Chris there than with you, because I just think, well, no, I think you are saying that Russia is a powerhouse, but I think that we need to respect Russia. There's no scenario that we can beat Russia. There are only two scenarios, really, that Russia gets what it's demanding in Ukraine, or we all lose. I can't see any other option. Whether it's right or wrong, the West simply hasn't got the military willpower, the might, to defeat Russia on its own doorstep.
I could completely agree. Completely agree.
In which case, let's go to one other area. This ties into what you've said. Greenland, interesting developments there, where Donald Trump has said he would consider using force to get Greenland on side. That's a tricky one, because how do you fight for a huge, massive, big island that looks like this? I mean, it's covered in ice and stuff. Do you know how many miles of actual road there are on Greenland?
27.
No, 100. Now that doesn't sound so small, but 100 miles. 100 miles on a huge, massive island. I should know the size. And so there's all this moaning by European leaders now saying, "Oh yeah, we've got to protect Greenland." They haven't got any power, whatever, do they?
They haven't. America will not invade Greenland. There's a prediction. America want Greenland, and America may go on the offensive now to convince the people of Greenland, why don't you become American citizens? They will approach, I think it's Denmark, who owns Greenland, saying we'll buy it off you. And for people going, you can't buy countries. Of course you can. America bought Alaska off Russia.
You can.
So the Shetland Islands were given to Scotland from Norway as a wedding present. So you can, so you can trade land. So if America, and let's go back to what I said before, Greater America, defending America going into the future. Iceland's a big part, not Iceland, Greenland's a big part of that if you look at the map. So of course they want to buy it. They will, if they get it, they will buy it. There'll be a referendum on the island where most people will probably vote to join America, and then they will buy it off Denmark. That's the only option there.
Yeah, I wish there was some mnemonic that could make Greenland great again sound like Gaga, but I don't think I can work it out. Not while we're on air. Greenland, Arctic great again, I suppose the best I can do in front of a live global studio and studio audience. The whole thing about Trump saying he's willing to think about taking Greenland by force. What are you taking? There are 57,000 people living there, but most of it's uninhabited. It's just a lump of ice on a rock.
If America wanted to take it, they could take it over a weekend, but they wouldn't do it by force.
Well, they don't need to, because they're allowed to do what they want there anyway, aren't they?
They are, but don't forget, I think Trump is planning for decades from now, and Greenland strategically protects the North America. That's why he wants that island.
Do you know how big? Do you know how big it is?
It's big.
It's 2,700 kilometers long, roughly, about 1,100 kilometers wide. Don't jump down my throat, folks, if that's not exactly right. But it's something. It's over 1,000 kilometers across and over 2,600 kilometers tall, if you like, from north to south. And there's 50,000. It's got the population, which is less than Southampton, I think. It's certainly less than a biggest town like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a town, Bristol. Certainly less population than Bristol in the whole of that island. He's not going to invade it, I don't think. I think he's having a fun. Ricky Sickles from the Philippines says, my, so much unknown, which is very, very measured for you, Ricky. What's going to happen with Ukraine? Any change in direction, or are they just going to keep on losing losing money, suffering corruption accusations, and losing lives and land.
I think, unless something unknown happens, I think this is going to carry on for a while yet. More death, more destruction, stalemate, but it'll just carry on. What the unknown is, I've got no idea. That's why it's the unknown. America may force Europe's hand. He may force Putin's hand. He may do a deal with Putin. Who knows? But something needs to be done. I just want this war to end. It's the only result that will benefit all sides, is the end of the killing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand the Ukraine resentment in that. If France suddenly invaded Cornwall, I'd be like, well, we're fighting these French guys until the last man, and we're going to kill them all. I get the Ukraine, point of view. They've taken some of our land. I get that. But it has to get to a stage where you say, this is unwinnable. We got to sue for peace. There's only two ways wars end. You either wipe out your enemy and that's the end of it, or you sue for peace. They're the only two.
Good to speak to you, Nick Buckley MBE. Where can people find your podcast?
All over social media. Find me on YouTube at Nick Buckley MBE. Daily videos, daily interviews, and I do a lot on Twitter and Facebook. Again, at Nick Buckley MBE.
I'm going to chat with Nick in a minute just after the show. You don't have to wait. You can find Nick Buckley MBE all over the place. Javier say thanks for getting involved in the chat. If you're watching this in the archive, obviously it'll be harder for me to chat with you. My prediction is that Europe and the United Kingdom are completely irrelevant now, really, almost irrelevant to what happens in Ukraine. I think that Zelensky has to do a deal. He will do that deal when he's told to by Trump. Trump and Putin have it sorted. It's all over by the killing, and the outcome is known. As for Greenland, I think that Trump is doing the art of the deal, and that art of the deal will lead to some kind of influence there, but he can build his air bases there anyway, because Greenland's more than happy to get the money. Don't forget to look at the other shows we got as well, including the great Warren Thornton, who regularly covers these subjects and will continue to do so. In the meantime, hope you found that interesting. So many great shows here on Unprecedented TV. Please like and subscribe, and that helps us. It's going to be a huge year when we don't want to beat the mainstream media. We want to be the mainstream media. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV. Have a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.